Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're logging in from. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. My name is Bami Disu. I'm Chief Business Officer at George Mason University Asia Campus. And it's my pleasure today to moderate this session put on by University of California, Davis, talking about global engagement, sustainability, and inclusion, and trying to figure what is the connection. Today we have four fantastic presenters, kicking off with Renata Garrison-Tull, who's the Vice Chancellor of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at UC Davis, Jolene Shoemaker, who's the Director of Global Engagement at, obviously, UC Davis as well, Camille Kirk, who's the Director of Sustainability and Campus Sustainability Planner, and Kelly Ann O'Day, who's the Assessment Program Manager. Right now, I'll turn it over to Jolene to share a few words.
Thank you so much, Bemi, and doubly thank you because I know is like the middle of the night where you are. So we really appreciate you moderating this session, and we're all very honored to be part of this event and to share a little bit more about our journey at UC Davis on the SDG agenda. So we wanted to start out just by offering a few facts about UC Davis. I don't want to bore anyone with a long list of statistics, but we think that it's important just to set a bit of the context for how we're approaching the SDGs and the breadth of SDGs that are covered at our university. So UC Davis is a comprehensive Tier 1 research university. We're a public land-grant university with more than 39,000 students enrolled. And we are the largest campus in the UC system, spanning more than 5,000 acres. We have 4 colleges and 6 graduate and professional schools and more than 100 undergraduate majors. And we have more than 100 graduate programs. Many of these involve multiple departments, schools, and colleges. UC Davis has been recognized for global engagement, diversity, and sustainability. It's key to who we are and how we are approaching the SDG agenda. Just a few examples. In 2020, in the QS World University Rankings USA, UC Davis was recognized as in the top spot with UCLA and NYU for diversity and internationalization. And this year also UC Davis received the prestigious NAFSA Simon Award for Campus Internationalization. UC Davis is ranked number 3 in the world and number 1 in the United States in sustainability by the Green Metric ranking. And this has been for the 3rd year in a row. And we have a STARS gold rating, which Camille and Kelly will talk about a little bit further into the session. Thank you again for having us, and we look forward to the questions.
Thank you. I said next we'll have Renata kick off with an example of how these SDG initiatives are important at UC Davis.
Yes, thank you very much. Mimi, it's good to see you again and good to be here this morning with my colleagues where it's morning. And so one of the very unique, I think, examples that we have related to how the SDGs are connected at UC Davis, particularly through my office, which is in diversity, equity, and inclusion, is that we're really trying to make sure that our faculty, and particularly our faculty from a variety of groups, are learning about the SDGs and thinking about how those SDGs can be incorporated into their research, really helping them to reframe their research related to one of the 17 SDGs. And so as an example, we have 2 centers for faculty and broadening participation. One of them is called Campos, the Center for Advancing Multicultural Perspectives on Science, and then a similar one for Social Sciences, Arts, and Humanities called CAMPS, the Center for Advancing Multicultural Perspectives in Social Sciences, Arts, and Humanities. And what we have tried to do is to let not only the faculty directors know, but also the faculty scholars, as well as the 200 affiliates know about the SDGs and how they can relate those SDGs to their research. I'll give you 3 quick examples. For one of our researchers is Dr. Rebecca Calisi Rodriguez, and so we have looked at and thought about reframing her research in biological sciences and in stress and how stress affects sexual behavior and reproduction in terms of SDG 3 for good health. For Dr. Maureen Kimua, who is in civil engineering in the College of Engineering, her research is on biological wastewater treatment, waste to energy, developing world systems, and global health. And so we've looked at her research in terms of SDGs 6 and 7, clean water and sanitation and renewable energy. And then for our Dean of Agricultural and Environmental Sciences, Dean Helene Dillard, looked at her work in biology, ecology, management of fungal pathogens which cause diseases in vegetable crops, and looking at that in terms of SDG 2 and no hunger. So those are just a few examples of how we're looking at SDGs across the research continuum.
Great. Thank you, Renata. Camille and Kelly, would you like to go next?
Absolutely. Thank you. As a geographer, I'm trained as a systems thinker, and for me, the SDGs matter because they highlight the inherent connection between social sustainability and environmental sustainability. I believe firmly that we cannot have a healthy planet without healthy and equitably served people, and likewise, we can't not have equity and human health without a healthy planet. The SDGs give campus sustainability officers like myself a clear path for demonstrating why and how sustainability has to go beyond traditionally operational imperatives, like reducing energy and reducing water consumption and so forth. And they help us focus on efforts for the need for diversity, equity, and inclusion to achieve any semblance of sustainability. One example of how we're activating the SDG agenda on our campus is through our approach to the International Performance Assessment STARS, which is the Sustainability Tracking, Assessment, and Rating System.
And so STARS takes a broad approach to sustainability with categories in academics, engagement, operations, and planning and administration. And in STARS, most universities tend to score highest in academics and engagement and lowest in operations and planning and administration. And as Jolynn mentioned, UC Davis earned a gold rating in the most recent STARS report with a score that was more evenly distributed across the 4 categories, which is unusual for universities. Planning and admin, which covers areas such as diversity and affordability and well-being and work, was actually our campus's second highest scoring category. And while compiling the report, our office focused on inclusion efforts, such as programs that support students from low-income and underrepresented groups, like the AB 540 and Undocumented Student Center and the Aggie Compass Basic Needs Center. We also included global efforts such as campus involvement with the Sustainable Development Solutions Network and the One Climate Initiative, which concentrates on collaboration to sustainably impact the world. The report also highlighted our continuous environmental efforts, such as generating over 30 million kilowatt hours of renewable energy on campus in the past year, and reducing business operations greenhouse gas emissions by 41% since 2008.
Thank you, Camille and Kelly. Now I'll go back to Jolene, who will share an example.
Thanks so much. I wanted to also preface my example by just talking for a minute or two about why in global affairs we feel that the SDG agenda really resonates with our principles at UC Davis and really with our future direction. In global affairs, our mission is to inspire global curiosity, understanding, and engagement. And we obviously, the SDGs closely align with this. We're in a process also to develop a campus global strategic plan, and the SDGs are organically also emerging out of that process. A very deep concern for global challenges emerging from our faculty surveys and our conversations around campus with faculty, staff, and students. And the SDGs will be reflected in that plan. And then also in our wider 10-year strategic plan for the full campus, our 10-year strategic plan is called To Boldly Go. It includes 5 goals, and each of these goals really intersects with the SDG agenda in important ways. Those goals include really focusing on educational experience for students to prepare them for the needs and challenges of our diverse and changing world, to enable research that matters for the planet and its inhabitants, to embrace diversity and practice inclusivity and equity, to support our various partnerships at the community, regional, state, nation, and world. And we're viewing SDGs as a way to engage on all those levels and to create really an environment to support innovation. And so we have this really important foundation, I think, for our work towards the SDG agenda. The example I wanted to share today, I'm sharing because I think it shows how one person, in this case a student, can make concrete contributions to the SDG agenda and contributions to people's lives. And it also shows the intersection between the work that our 3 offices really do and what our missions are. So we, UC Davis biochemistry and molecular biology student named Jonathan Ho, who grew up in Singapore, when he got to UC Davis, started volunteering with a project called the Knights Landing One Health Center. And this project, this initiative provides health care in a very rural, underserved area of Northern California. And as Jonathan was volunteering, he recognized a community need, and he started working with both mentors at UC Davis and community members in tandem to create a community garden. And the goal of this garden was really to grow produce that could then be used as part of the initiative's healthy cooking and nutritional classes that it offered to the community. And his other objective was really to integrate his international background and offer healthy recipes from around the world. This project really shows both, of course, youth leadership and service and how important that is to this agenda. But it also really shows that interconnection between global engagement and cross-cultural understanding, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and sustainability principles. Among others, the project is, of course, supporting the SDG 2 to address zero hunger, but also good health and well-being, SDG 3, reduced inequalities, SDG 10, and life on land, SDG 15. So we thought this would be an important example just to showcase one of many things that are going on, but I think a very powerful example of the interlinkage.
Great, thank you, Jillian. And I was going to ponder my next question to you, but I'll let you take a quick break and toss it instead to Renata and say, Renata, how have you achieved institutional buy-in at UC Davis? What were some challenges and obstacles that you encountered, and how did you manage to resolve them in terms of what you guys have done in the space of triangulating these 3 really important factors?
Yes, thank you. So I want to say that I've had challenges. I've been at UC Davis for about a year. And quite frankly, the connection, I think, of sustainability, inclusion, and global engagement, a lot of it goes to our Vice Provost for Global Affairs, Joanna Rogolska, who I know you know very well. So interestingly enough, prior to coming to UC Davis, I had been involved in a couple of different kinds of organizations, the World Engineering Education Forum, and I first learned about the SDGs in Cartagena, Colombia, actually. And then later through the Latin and Caribbean Consortium of Engineering Institutions, and have been involved with learning more about the SDGs and trying to bring it to a diverse student population with some of the grants that I had through the National Science Foundation. And when I came to UC Davis, Joanna, Professor Ragosta, knew about some of that interest, and it actually invited me to participate in some of the different kinds of opportunities and programs and initiatives that they had in global affairs. I was thrilled because I really wanted to connect a broader audience to global affairs, to the SDGs, which I thought were so important because it actually provided context for research types of initiatives. And so both Joanna and I are in a lot of leadership meetings for the University of California, Davis. We see each other weekly in weekly leadership meetings. We're both part of the Council of Deans and Vice Chancellors, and we're in a variety of different spaces. For example, our provost recently convened a meeting on international issues last week. And so we have an opportunity to talk about a variety of issues and to bring the SDGs forward. As part of that, I also have team members in my own Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion who work with team members over in global affairs related to moving forward an agenda of global education for all and moving the SDGs to be, I would say, promoted amongst a broader audience. And so to date, I don't think we've really had very many challenges. If we can say we have challenges, it would just be making sure that more people across our audience know more about the SDGs. So we just have to do a bit more marketing, a bit more branding, a bit more sharing of the information. And people across the campus are learning more about it. We have an SDG forum, which I think you'll hear more about perhaps from Jolene. But I'm really excited about the way that our offices are moving and working together in a very smooth way.
That's great. Thanks. Looks like there was already an interest and a buy-in, and so you've been able to leverage that to achieve what we are talking about today. So this is a good segue to go back to you, Jolene. And so what are some key factors that you would say have been critical to your efforts to coordinate all of these activities around the SDGs at UC Davis?
Yeah, sure. I wanted to highlight a few things that as our three offices have been thinking through what we are doing together, what we want to do together, and sort of the unique characteristics of our partnership that as it grows and is strengthened. And one of the things I think that is really, really important is that for all of our offices, the SDG agenda is considered an imperative. This is a leadership issue. We all of our leadership from our offices does not consider this a check-the-box exercise, but rather integral to the work that we're each doing in our offices and integral to the entire campus. And I think this is a really important foundation that's really needed to have that deep collaboration and that commitment from each of the offices. So we're all, as Renetta mentioned, we're all very focused on how can we raise awareness, how can we identify and support champions, how can we extend the work in new directions. The second thing I would say is that we are thinking about how we can leverage our own unit commitments to expand what we do on SDGs. And what I mean by that, Camille and Kelly will talk a bit more about the STARS reporting as well, but we all have institutional pieces that we are already working on that have alignment with the SDG agenda. And we're looking together at how those are creating windows of opportunity for us to include additional lenses from each other's offices. So I think that's really important piece of the collaboration. The third is, I think one thing we also share among our offices is that collaboration is a core philosophy. So in global affairs, we already know that the evidence shows what the positive impact is of engaging with international partners and networks. and to build those relationships and that joint work. And we know, all of us, that we cannot possibly solve these complex global challenges without working together. So because that's such an embedded philosophy of collaboration rather than go it alone, I think that's a really important principle that that has been a foundation. And lastly, I would just mention, we're also thinking very carefully about how can we leverage our own networks and relationships and partnerships that each of our offices is building, has built, because we do swim in different waters. We have different constituents. We have different stakeholders and groups and associations that we are engaged with. And so once we start working together, we have already started to find opportunities to bring each other in to those conversations and expand the opportunities for those that we're working directly with, both on the campus and off.
Great, thank you. And next I'll turn over to Camille and Kelly. My question to you is, we've heard from Renetta and from Jolene, how they achieve the buy-in, what are the key factors and foundations that need to be laid down. So for you, could you share with us what are the benefits of this collaborative approach versus if you each just did it in your own silos? Some of it is obvious, but there are obviously some tangible benefits from this particular trilogy.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to say some things that are going to really echo what Jolene's already said, which I think also are important points that can't be stated enough times. Global engagement, equity and inclusion, and environmental sustainability are all complex and challenging endeavors. Hard things only get done with a lot of collaboration and involving a lot of different people and their perspectives and insights. So in our case, that includes folks from across campus, external to campus, and across the world. Our human and environmental systems are interconnected. So I mentioned systems thinking earlier, which I'm a big proponent of, and I believe that systems thinking is inherent to the SDGs. Each of the Sustainable Development Goals is inherently connected to all of the other Sustainable Development Goals. And systems thinking demands approaching problems from a collaborative perspective. Yet, in a giant research university like UC Davis, it can be hard at times to find ways to collaborate given our structure and reporting lines and the different, as you pointed out, Bemi, silos that we exist in. So we on this panel, we are modeling this practice as we go. We're learning. We're definitely grappling our way forward. And we are being deliberate and intentional in trying to collaborate with each other. I think you heard both from Renetta and from Jolene that there's this very intentional effort to connect around previously known interests and also exploring, asking a lot of questions of each other. What are you also interested in? How can we also partner on additional activities? So we're trying different things and working together. We've been running engagement work together. For example, Office of Sustainability and Global Affairs have partnered to run the World Climate Simulation a couple of times at UC Davis. We're participating in international networks together and sharing our perspectives with our colleagues internationally. We're undertaking performance assessment crosswalks together, and you're going to hear a little bit more about that from Kelly. And you'll hear later from us about some of the additional things that we're trying. The SDG forum's already been mentioned. I think to make progress, we need many voices in different rooms and different discussions. Joanna Rigolska has said, if you're the only one talking about your issue, people probably are going to tune you out. That really resonates with me. I think that's a very true statement. So if we're all supporting each other's messages about sustainability, global engagement, and inclusion, and demonstrating how these issues are interwoven parts of a system, when we're in our different sectors and spheres interacting with different constituencies, that helps create that, that really purposeful collaboration and that purposeful support of each other. And Kelly?
Yes, and when forging those relationships like our three offices have, something really cool happens. Their concerns kind of become our concerns, vice versa. We can start viewing situations through each other's lenses, as Jolene mentioned. So if we're sitting in a meeting or something, you know, I'm kind of thinking of things with the lens of global affairs and diversity, equity, and inclusion, not just sustainability. And our collaboration helps with pooling resources and information, utilizing each other's expertise, extending influence and reaching additional constituencies. We combine efforts instead of doubling or repeating efforts. So we think of projects that the other one is working on. Instead of reworking the wheel, we can use those as resources. For example, when discussing how to measure UC Davis's progress towards achieving the SDGs with global affairs, we came up with the idea to use the STARS report as a resource. And together our offices conducted a STARS SDG crosswalk in which we mapped the SDGs against the STARS report. And since we already had STARS, a completed sustainability assessment for the campus in our hands, and it was an assessment that took a lot of time and energy to put together, we might as well utilize that to the best of our ability. So the crosswalk revealed that the STARS report covered all 17 SDGs and 112 out of 169 SDG targets, which is really cool to discover.
So I'd say that by collaborating, I was just going to say by collaborating, I think we can strengthen our various messages instead of diluting them. We present a coordinated front and we unite together to support each other and our institution in achieving our various aims.
Great, thank you so much. So right before we sort of open up for some Q&A, I'll just have you all go around and talk about what's next, right? So it seems like you've each achieved a lot as individual units and collaboratively. So what's next in sort of continuing to position this successful model at your institution? And I'll kick off with Camille.
Okay, so now that we've done the STARS SDG crosswalk that Kelly was explaining, we are using that work to start a voluntary university review, and our three offices will collaborate. Office of Sustainability and Global Affairs will take the lead in organizing the process, and we plan to use the outcomes from this review to inform a campus sustainability plan, among other uses that we will find for the review.
And we're very appreciative of having the recently released example from Carnegie Mellon. For our voluntary review, we are working on methods to engage our campus community throughout the process in ways that fit with our campus culture and reflect the very interconnected nature of the SDGs, as Camille mentioned. Both Camille and I are really enthusiastic about how conducting a voluntary review naturally lends opportunities for collaborating extensively with our global affairs and inclusion colleagues, as well as others on campus.
Great, thank you. Next, Jolene, can you share what's next for Global Affairs?
Sure. So I just wanted to mention, Renetta had mentioned it, but one of the things we're really excited about doing together is a SDG forum for our campus. And the idea is really that the idea has been in the works for a while. And so the idea really, in terms of the COVID and us not being able to meet in person for a convening of this sort, is that we're going to be having 3 sessions over the course of the year. We're on the quarter system, so one in October and then one in winter and spring. And each of those sessions will be really aimed at trying to increase the awareness, as Renetta said, for the SDG agenda and get people on our campus within our community to really see the relevance, to see their individual role in this agenda, to inspire more action. We'll be showcasing some of the work that is being done by faculty and students, and we hope that that will create more momentum on our campus for further engagement and work. So we're very excited about partnering on this front, since we each bring again a unique lens that'll make a much more holistic conversation.
Great, thank you. And just a quick reminder for the audience is please put your questions into the Q&A section, and we'll get to those just shortly after Renetta. I will hand it over to you to tell us what's next for your unit.
Okay, so actually something's coming up this week. I am giving a talk, and it is going to be, it was going to be in Mexico, but it's actually going to be virtual, but it is highlighting SDGs 6, 7, 9, and 11. and particularly how women in research and women in STEM research can get more involved in the SDGs. And I'll be doing some of the things that I talked about today, which is highlighting some of our UC Davis researchers who are doing work in this area, and particularly women and women from groups that are underrepresented, so that the people who are part of the audience will have not only role models, but be able to see and be motivated by some of the work that's being done. So my office has actually been working with Global Affairs because Global Affairs actually has a wonderful database that they've started to put together where they're linking the work that researchers are doing around the campus with specific SDGs. And so when I ask, who are the researchers on campus who are doing work in sustainable cities, who are doing work in these different SDGs, then it's very easy for them to pull that information and for us to dig deeper. And so I'm looking forward to that and to being involved in the SDG forum that Jolene mentioned, because we also have researchers who have been part of a small grants process, and they have had an opportunity to have a small amount of money to do some research related specifically to the SDGs, and we're going to be hearing from them in that upcoming SDG forum.
Great, thank you. I see a question. Does any of the panelists want any additional time, or should we jump into questions? Are you good? Okay. So there's a question, and I think whoever wants to answer it, but it's specific. Someone wanted, Ms. Williamson asked, can you give some specific examples of engagement between your student programs and local government and businesses, especially minority communities, to help link the SDGs to everyday lifestyle? So I think some of the issues we've had with SDGs is this notion of it's always sort of seen as a global engagement, while we've kind of talked about how it's really global, right? How you can have this global impact, but also some of the tools used in Rwanda for filtering water could be used in Flint, Michigan, right? So how can you, what are some examples of any partnerships between students and external parties for local impact? Who would like to take it?
So I can just start to talk just a little bit about something that we're starting to look into. And again, like I said, I've just been at UC Davis for about a year, but one of the things that I was able to do in a former position, and then I shared some of this with my colleagues at UC Davis, is when we took students actually to a conference, and these were underrepresented students, undergraduate students, to a conference. It was very interesting. This was in Peru. They were actually caught in the middle of a protest there in Peru, and had a chance to really start to think about some of the issues that the Peruvian people were thinking about, and then draw those back to their own context in their own neighborhoods. And as we in the DEI office are now working with some K-12 programs, and also having our undergraduate students connect in terms of being peer mentors for some of those programs, one of the things that we do want to do is to bring the SDGs into those areas, particularly when we talk about sustainable cities, when we talk about health and healthcare, when we talk about gender equity. And so we want to make sure that they are connected too. We are working with various school systems. We have some programs that are working with some of the different districts, and that's incredibly important now in this era of COVID, where we're trying to make sure that there's a distribution of resources across the board, so that the needs of the people are going to be met within the city, particularly in the Sacramento area.
I can also pipe in with a couple of thoughts on that question. One is we have a major initiative at UC Davis right now called Global Education for All. And as part of that, we're doing a lot of work along a lot of fronts to expand the opportunities for students to gain global competencies. And one of the things that we are doing is looking at various ways that students can pursue internships, and that also includes thinking about how global engagement and cross-cultural learning, global learning can occur at the local and regional level, not just traveling internationally or doing an internship in New York at the UN, but closer to home as well. So my colleagues are identifying and sharing a lot of those opportunities as well. And then the other thing that's happening that's a little bit more organic, but I think it really shows kind of how the SDG agenda, the awareness is growing and how it is resonating, is some of my colleagues work extensively with student groups on campus and also international students and scholars. And increasingly, as we've been talking about the SDG agenda, student groups and student leaders who are engaged in community work and projects are seeing that framework as really inclusive of what they are doing and what their goals are for the impact they want to make in the world. So we're really seeing that as we present the SDGs as a framework that also includes this work at the local level, that the students are really gravitating towards that frame. It makes sense to them. It inspires passion and inspires a sense of connection with between the local needs and the global needs. So we're also seeing that that happen as well.
Great responses. We have about 6 minutes, so I don't see any other questions. So I'll just ask one that I'm curious about. So given sort of the current climate in the United States around the issues of social justice and the pandemic around the issues of mobility being limited, I'm really curious as to the impact of this on students and also from a diversity perspective, access. So in certain areas, sometimes internationally, but also locally, we've seen some students don't have access to good internet for all this distance learning. So on one hand, online seems to create more access for people. On the other hand, it creates less access. So what does your partnership look like in this new normal that we're all experiencing?
I can start a little bit along that line. So one of the things that the university has tried to do is to really make sure that everyone has the level of access that they need in order to engage not only in their courses, but in these different kinds of co-curricular kinds of activities. And so for starters, just in terms of hardware and software, our School of Biological Sciences, as an example, tried to make sure that as many students as possible had laptops, and so they had a laptop borrowing program. But the campus also, even though we were in a remote kind of an instruction situation, the campus stayed open specifically because we knew that we had people from a variety of different backgrounds who needed to have access to the different kinds of connectivity that we had available on campus. And so a lot of those spaces have remained open and available to students to use that. I think that the interesting thing that is happening is that, again, we have team members, at least on in the DEI side, working with global affairs on a variety of different kinds of issues. We have groups that have worked together particularly on an online orientation package that has connections from global affairs as well as diversity, equity, and inclusion for our new incoming students so that they will understand that connection and sort of their place in a global society. And that is something that is new and it's growing. And we have team members who are continuing to work together to collaborate to bring in more of the knowledge of what it means to have privilege, what it means to sort of understand even issues of when we talk about Black Lives Matter as an example and what that means across the board. Joanna had a special coffee earlier this summer where we were able to just candidly talk about a variety of different issues. And so when we think about, again, the different SDGs related to equity, then those kinds of things have come to the forefront.
And I'll add from sustainability's perspective, we mentor a student grant program called the Green Initiative Fund, or TGIF for short. And this is a student fee-funded program where a student committee gives out money to majority student-led projects, sustainability projects on campus and off campus in the community. Some of the projects that were supported both before but also with a very intent focus during COVID response and when it all came down in March were ensuring food security through programs to help make food available, either through food recovery of perfectly good food that was not being served, or through increasing access to food for students and also other community members. So there's been that work, and our coffee house on campus, which is, we think, the largest student-run restaurant in the nation. We believe that still holds true. Also did a lot of work to try to ensure that they could support food security for students in need who are facing increased insecurity due to the COVID response and abrupt ending of a lot of resources that were previously available. So there was an effort to try to continue or invent new resources to bridge these gaps.
One other thing I would say is just a big part of this for us in global affairs is creating the space for the dialogues to happen, listening to partners, just creating that engagement so that we can hear the issues, we can share solutions, etc. A lot of the access issues, just like beyond global affairs and beyond UC Davis, were really highlighted for us. We did a series in the summer in collaboration with IIE on the future of international education. We'll be coming out with a briefing paper on that, but a big chunk of that was actually talking about the access issues that have been brought to light, from the digital divide, and some of that is really impacting not only, everyone's university really. We also have a new online event series called Global Conversations, and we're looking at really utilizing that platform to have some multifaceted discussions around some of these issues as well. And so we look forward to that being ongoing. And then the other piece of this is just really like how we do the work during COVID-19. Some of our, with our partnerships and some of our grants on the SDGs, and it's hard to do the work if you can't travel. And so I know that one of the examples that was given in one of our more recent faculty gatherings was just one of our faculty working with partners in Africa was saying, with the internet stability, they're moving to everyone has a cell phone, so they're utilizing cell phones instead. So it's just coming up with those solutions in partnership, in very close collaboration with your partners that are really important, and asking the right questions and just making that a norm for working together.
Great, thank you so much. And in the interest of time, I believe we're going. We have had a fantastic panel. I think everyone kind of sees the importance of the work that you're doing, and you've really laid the foundation for examples of how people can replicate as best as possible, given their own unique institutional landscape. So thank you so much to the panel today. I think we've all learned a lot about where all those three units intersect and the impact you can have on the community and your institution. So UC Davis always puts every institution to shame with how active you are across many channels. So keep up the great work. And for anybody else, feel free to email them if you have questions. So have a good day, and we'll see you at the closing session.
Thank you so much. Bye.
All right, bye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.